Hello there, Eye2EyeIIIV, I believe you call yourself. I've been looking at some of your videos, and I came across this one video, the top 16 most impaired mistakes atheists make. Well, I think that this video should be retitled the top 16 most impaired mistakes Eye2EyeIIIV makes. And I'm going to start debunking, well, maybe not debunking, but so much just replying to your 16 points. Okay, here we go.
Number 1. They continuously fail to provide any evidence that atheism is accurate and correct.
Okay, and it looks like we're starting with the shock of God question about atheism being accurate and correct. Okay, well, let's try this thought experiment. Let's say that you find someone who says that a large blue hermaphroditic blue whale is what caused the universe to be created, that it gurped it up or threw it up out of its stomach, and that's what caused everything to be created. Now you'd tell that person that that's wrong, that you don't believe that. Okay, well that person's going to then ask you, okay, provide evidence that a large blue hermaphroditic whale didn't gurp the universe into existence. Prove that your position denying that is accurate and correct. Okay, so how are you going to prove to someone that a large blue whale didn't cause the universe to be created? Okay, so you see what I mean? Like, all you're simply saying to that person is, I don't believe you. So all an atheist is saying to a Christian is, I don't believe you. That's it. I don't believe you. I don't have to provide evidence that my disbelief is accurate or correct. I just don't believe you. I don't buy it. Simple as that.
Number 2. They happen to stick with more of an unscientific attitude of name-calling rather than just debating creationists nowadays. And again, I'm still trying to confirm my email address for Blog TV to debate evolutionists.
Okay. Looking at your second point here, and in all honesty, I really can't say a lot against this second point, because a lot of people on both sides of this argument tend to resort to unscientific attitudes and name-calling rather than just debating the facts. I can't really argue with that. I've seen many an atheist do that, and I've seen many a religious person do that as well. However, the fact that I'm taking this time right now to debate your 16 points without resorting to name-calling kinda does debunk your first point, at least for everybody. But, oh well, let's move on.
Number 3. They seem as if they want to put forth this characteristic initiative of an attitude as if this world is supposed to come to that of a rude, cussing, swearing, disrespectful, egotistical, assertion-filled, unscientific, malicious, derogatory, God-denying people, when that world would hardly make any advancements in science whatsoever.
Okay, I don't really understand where you're coming from with this third point. Like, why does being an atheist automatically make you rude, disrespectful, egotistical, assertion-filled, unscientific, malicious, and derogatory? I don't see how that follows. Like, okay, so I say I don't believe in God, or any God, or gods at all. Like, I don't believe in the supernatural. So, what about that statement is rude, cussing, swearing, disrespectful, egotistical, assertion-filled, unscientific, malicious, or derogatory? Like, the only thing you have here that holds any water is that it's God-denying. But just because I deny God, does it make me any of those other adjectives that you like to throw around so much? So, yeah, it doesn't follow.
Number 4. They're usually confusing the terms evolution with variation within the kinds, and like using that as an example of evolutionism happening right before our eyes when it's not. They're confusing not only themselves, but others too.
Okay, I see your part 4 here, though. Confusing the terms evolution with variation within the kinds. Okay. Here's where we start getting into the nitty-gritty, because what is a kind? Like, I've never quite heard that explain, scientifically or otherwise, as to what is a kind? Are all fish of the same kind? Or is it just all bass are of the same kind and trout are of a different kind? Are all rodents of the same kind? Or are mice different from rats? Like, are all rats of the same kind and all mice of a different kind? Like, I don't get where you define the kinds. Like, are ponies the same kind as a horse? Like, is the whale the same kind as a dolphin? Like, where are the definition between kinds? Like, where is there a line that says, okay, everything on this side of the line is of this kind, and everything on the other side of the line is of another kind? Like, I don't get it. I don't think there really is kinds. Like, to say that, like, you know, like, my personal belief is that there really aren't kinds. Like, every species is pretty much unique in and of its own way, so you can't say like 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever species are of the same kind. You can say they're all related, but I don't know, just talking about confusing not only themselves but others, but throwing in this variations within the kind, I find is very confusing. So, until I can hear a definition of what a kind actually is, and some examples as to what falls into one kind and another and everything like that, I think I'm not going to put much credence in that variation within the kinds.
Number 5. When claiming God is harsh and evil, besides all the misconceptions and misunderstandings, they are refuting and contradicting their very position, when it's supposedly no big deal if God already doesn't exist in their mind, and when the Bible is the very doctrine that defines what's harsh and evil.
Okay, now we're on to your part 5 here, you know. So basically what you're saying is that if I come out and say that God is evil, you can turn around and point to me and say, aha, you believe in God too, don't you? Okay, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Because I could say Hannibal Lecter is evil. Like, if you ever saw the movie The Silence of the Lambs, I think you would agree that yes, Hannibal Lecter is an evil character. But me coming out and saying he's an evil character doesn't make him real. He is a fictional evil character within the story of his fiction. Just like Sauron is an evil character within the fiction of The Lord of the Rings. But for me to come out and say that Sauron is evil doesn't make Sauron real. Okay. And when you say the Bible is the very doctrine that defines what's harsh and evil, well, it's not the only doctrine that claims to do that, so, you know, I could probably find a million different books written by a million different people that all claim to say what is right and wrong, but I don't see what gives the Bible any more credibility than, like, the Torah, or the Quran, the Book of Mormon, the Watchtower. Like, they all claim kind of the same thing, so, yeah. So, yeah, I don't think your point 5 really flies.
Number 6. They claim they can be moral and can supposedly explain its origin, when soon enough they go off on a lot of vulgar gutter talk and disrespectfulness and are ignorant of the dark history atheism has played in society. Morality has had no origin. Its very source is the Lord himself. We, as sinful, fallen, fallible beings, are in no position to describe and limit morality.
Okay, I'm looking at your part 6 here, and really, we gotta get something straight, okay? Vulgar gutter talk is not immoral. You can be moral and still swear and cuss, you know, like, I'm sorry if you have a hard time grasping that, but someone can be moral and still be vulgar. Okay. You're saying that we're ignorant of the dark history atheism has played in society. Okay. What role did atheism play during the Dark Ages? Or the Inquisition? You know, like, what role did atheism play during any of the wars that you can name of people killing people in the name of God? Like wiping out the Canaanites and everything, and Moses commanding people to kill every last thing that breathes, what man, women, children, like, you know. sure, people have killed people without God being a reason. Like, I know the communists killed people because they believed that communism was better than capitalism. And they didn't want anything to compete with the doctrine of communism, so they had to get rid of religion, because if someone could turn to religion, that meant they turned away from the party. And China is kind of in the same boat, is that if you allow a lot of religious belief in there to go unfettered, people can use that to kind of find an authority separate from the ruling party. But all that means is that they're just replacing one version of a doctrine with their version of a doctrine. So, I don't know. And you're saying that morality has had no origin? Okay. Its very source is the Lord himself. Okay, so I guess his version of morality is don't do as I do, do as I say. Because God did a lot of things and ordered a lot of things to be done, which I personally find immoral. So, what does that mean? Like, if I find God immoral, then is my morality broken? Like, I'm sorry, but, flooding the entire world just because they don't meet your high standards of perfection isn't a moral act. Like, that is just, like, how could you justify that morally? Like, rather than try to help them, try to teach them, like, this is God we're talking about. He supposedly has the power where if he wanted to, he could personally appear in front of every single person on earth and speak to them in their language and in such a way where they would fully understand everything he has to tell them. He could do this, so he could have done that rather than flooding the entire world. So why is it more moral to kill everyone than it is to educate them? Okay, that's my position at least.
Number 7. Degenerated atheists cannot be trusted with the word religion, because the manner in which they use it is way beyond crazy and confusing. They claim to be against religion, when they're really only out to bash the gospel, a message that is polar opposite to religion, and using all sorts of flawed reasons as to why they are against it. I might discuss that in another video. But they really don't seem to mind Eastern religions. For example, if I brought up Jesus, they would say, oh, no, I'm not into religion. But if I brought up Buddha, they'd say, oh, wow, Buddhism, wow. See the difference? And it seems like they love teaming up with Muslims to profess the same sarcastic rubbish that Christians, Jews, and Muslims all worship the same God, when they're totally ignorant of the reality that Muslims have a totally different God than the Jews and Christians.
Okay, I'm looking at your part 7 here, and you're really starting to lose me here, because you're saying that atheists cannot be trusted with the word religion because the manner in which they use it is confusing. And they claim to be against religion, but they're out to bash the gospel, and the gospel isn't religion. And then you start going on about Eastern religions and Muslims and Jews and just, Okay. How is the gospel not religion? Okay, just because you call it gospel doesn't make it not religion. Because gospel, I'm pretty sure, derives from the term God's spell. That was I think that was used in the Greek when they were writing the Bible. So, if it's supposed to be like the word of God, doesn't that make it religious? Okay. So yeah, I don't know. So I'm sorry, but this point here is point 7. I just find extremely confusing, and I'm just having a real hard time wrapping my head around how gospel is not religion, and how supposedly Eastern religions are fine to atheists, but I don't believe in Eastern religions like Taoism and Buddhism and Taoism and all that stuff. Like it's it's no different than Jediism, really, to me. Like, belief in the supernatural is belief in the supernatural, whether you call it God or spirituality or reincarnation or the mother goddess. It's all kind of the same to me.
Number 8. They say God doesn't exist, but then they use his name as a curse word. What is the point of keeping him in your sarcastic language if you try to profess he doesn't exist? Try to be a bit more consistent with exclamations and such, because it's very disappointing.
Okay, God as a curse word. You know, this really has nothing to do with whether God exists or not, or anything like that. This just sounds like nitpicking from a Christian point of view, because you don't like people using the name of something you find very sacred in vain, whatever that happens to mean. So you say that, oh, if you use God's name as a curse word, it's being really sarcastic. You're trying to profess he doesn't exist, but you're using his name. It's like, okay. So, what do you propose as an alternative? Like, so if I want to say something to somebody, what? Do I say jumping Jehoshaphat? You know, do I say holy cow? Because that's actually like a derogatory term to the Indian religion, where they believe that, you know, cows are sacred, the Hindus kind of thing. So, you know, like, what do I use as a replacement that is going to be so equally understood as, you know, a nice, good curse word? Like, come on, like, depending on the situation you're in, it could be the best tool to get your message across. And I'm sorry, but, you know, jumping Jehoshaphat just doesn't quite cut it sometimes. So, and this has nothing to do with whether God exists or not. Like, all this has to do with the fact is that Christian ideology just is so predominant in our culture that it's the one thing that you can almost guarantee someone else will understand. Like, so if I go around and start, you know, saying Zeus or Ares or whatever, you know, people aren't going to understand what I'm talking about. And the idea of language is to be understood. So, I don't know. And you find it very disappointing, well, that's fine, you know. Sure, like, hey, maybe in the future when I start to curse, I'll start cursing in the name of the Earth or in the name of the galaxy or something like that. I don't know. But until more people start to, I don't know, understand, then those curse words are probably going to be around for a long time.
Number 9. They try to profess they can't believe the Bible because of science. They can't fool me. They're really hiding behind that word to mean evolutionism and millions of years, which is not a legitimate science. And they are ignorant of the fact that nearly all branches of science were established by Bible-believing Christians, and that science has repeatedly confirmed many areas of study in the Bible. Science and the Bible go along just fine, but science does not go along well with religion and ideologies.
Okay, your part 9 here, where you know, you go on about how Bible, science, evolution, millions of years, blah blah blah, you know. But the part that I really find interesting is you say science was established by Bible-believing Christians, and that science has repeatedly confirmed areas of study in the Bible. Okay, well, as is my understanding, up to maybe even a couple hundred years ago, or maybe even just 100 years ago, like, well, I remember the part you even talk about Inherit the Wind and the Scopes Monkey trial. What was he on trial for? He was on trial for teaching evolution. That means teaching evolution was illegal. And that was less than 100 years ago. So imagine a few hundred years ago, like when Galileo, like, if you came out and said you weren't a Bible-believing Christian, you would have been killed. So there were Bible-believing Christians, and there were the dead. So I'm sorry, but dead scientists don't do much science. So I'm sure in the past there were many scientists who had to proclaim a belief in the Bible and God, or else they would die. So that is not evidence now to say that, oh, well, because they believed in the Bible, you should too. Like, just we now live in a world where we have the freedom to actually say that, where before we didn't.
Number 10. They say that Christian creation scientists and Christian creationists are uneducated, when the very exact visible appeal of current society showing a sign of Cursing, cussing, swearing, gutter-mouthing, disrespectful, mean, short-sighted, narrow-minded, simple-minded, credulous, selfish, hypocritical, all-called-playing, ignorant, arrogant, insecure, vague, conscienceless, egotistical, speculating, simplistic, assertion-filled, unscientific, disgusting, backstabbing, biased, liberal, degenerate, depressed, sorrowful, violent, dangerous, suicidal, drunk, drug-taking, crime-infesting, baby-killing, sexually immoral, indoctrinated, manipulated, hallucinating, irrational, delusional, uneducated, untutored, unwise, unrighteous, unproductive, inconsistent, undetermined people, which shows absolutely no sign of an educated generation whatsoever. Why would you defend the very philosophy that supports all this degeneracy? Perhaps it'd be safe to say that America used to raise up educated people, those who acknowledged and understood that there was a loving Creator who made them, and that by studying and researching the earth they could establish good, pure, real science that was a major area of study that revealed God's fingerprint in creation. People like Isaac Newton, James Clerk Maxwell, George Washington Carver, etc.
Okay, your point 10 here is just kind of a rambling of all of the name-calling that you want to give to atheists. Kind of like, you go on and say we're ignorant, narrow-minded, drunk, drug-taking. Drug-taking, huh? So where in the Bible does it say it's immoral to take a drug, you know? Last I remember hearing in Genesis, there was some writing about how everything was the domain of man, and including all the seed-bearing herbs, which I've heard many people who smoke cannabis say that, well, cannabis is a seed-bearing herb, so therefore God put it there for us. So what makes drug-taking so uneducated? What makes cursing uneducated? What makes swearing uneducated? Hallucinating? Okay, you can... Okay, like... I'm sorry, but there is a big difference between uneducated and a lot of these words you have here. Like selfish? Like, I'm sorry, I could be highly educated and very selfish. I could be highly educated and very blasphemous. Like, hell, I could be highly educated and still be killing babies. Like, you know, like if I was a complete moron, I probably wouldn't be able to do it and get away with it. But like serial killers and things like that, they're able to do it for years sometimes because of how highly educated they are. Like, there is no connection between education and morality, as far as I can tell. Yeah, and then you go on to say that America used to raise up educated people that understood there was a loving Creator, and that they could establish good, pure, real science. Okay, well, science is really the starting point of saying, I don't know, and then you have to go out and answer the question. But you're already starting with the understanding that there was a loving Creator. Like, starting with the idea that there's a God is not scientific. To be scientific would be to start out with the question, what is the chances that a God exists, and then trying to determine it one way or the other through reasoning or deduction or observation, you know. Like, there's a lot of different routes in which you can take, but you don't start at the end where you say, okay, I know what the answer is to life, the universe, and everything. You know, science, that's where science ends up. That's not where it begins. So if you're talking about how pure, real science is science based on the knowledge that there's a loving Creator, then I'm sorry, but that's not science, you know, as any way that I know it.
Number 11. Their non-stop continuous practical game of comparing apples and oranges. For example, they like comparing God to the Tooth Fairy, when obviously there's no evidence for the Tooth Fairy, and there's abundant evidence that God is not fictional.
Okay, your part 11 here about comparing apples to oranges. You know, okay, yeah. You say that there's evidence for a young Earth, but no evidence for a flat Earth. Well, I haven't seen any evidence for a young Earth either, so... And then you go on to compare God to the Tooth Fairy, which... It is so funny to hear you say that, because, like, you're so close. Because you say there's no evidence for the Tooth Fairy, but there is evidence that God is not fictional. Okay, So what... Okay. What proof and accurate truth and evidence do you have that the tooth fairy does not exist? Okay. Going back to your very first point. Okay. What proof do you have that atheism towards the tooth fairy is accurate and correct? Okay, like, I'm not even going to get into the, you say there's proof for God, and I've never heard it or anything like that. I just want to hear your proof for the lack of existence for the tooth fairy. Like, really, like, support that position. Prove that the tooth fairy is not true, that that position is accurate or correct. I would love that.
Number 12. Destroying certain words appliances, child abuse, terrorist, brainwashing, fundamentalist, cult, uneducated, education, science, reason, logic, religion, scientist, etc. They're destroying all those words and really confusing many people with how they use them.
Okay, your part 12 here is kind of confusing. Destroying certain words appliances? Like, I'm thinking you're talking about the application of these words. Child abuse, terrorist, brainwashing, science. Okay, I don't know what you mean by destroying words. Like, so what? You're saying that because we now want to admit that raising a kid from birth to believe in something that could be detrimental to them is child abuse, that's destroying the word? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Number 13. They claim creationists use circular reasoning in their logic, when by closer observations they don't. I'll discuss this in another video. Actually, their very own religion of evolutionism has several areas of circular reasoning, like survival of the fittest. Oh, teacher, why did it survive? Oh, because it's fittest, survival of the fittest. Well, how do you know it's the fittest? Because it survived. And by supposedly dating the fossils by the rocks, by dating the rocks by the fossils. Circular reasoning.
Okay, your part 13 here about circular reasoning, okay, you say that creationists don't use circular reasoning? Okay. There is a God because the Bible says so. And the Bible is real because God wrote it. We know God is real because the Bible says so. And we know the Bible is true because God wrote it. We know God is real because the Bible says so. And we know the Bible is true because God wrote it. You don't see anything circular with that reasoning. Okay? Like, we know the Bible is true because God wrote it, and we know God is true because the Bible says so. Okay. I think that's almost the definition of circular reasoning. And then you get on to survival of the fittest. Oh, how do you know it was the fittest? Because it survived. How do you know it's going to survive? Because it's the fittest? Okay, that's not quite the same. Like, okay, if I took, 10 dogs and threw them in a big field somewhere and let them just go on about their merry way and do whatever, and I came back and only 2 of the dogs were still alive, couldn't I say that the 2 dogs that survived were the fittest ones to survive because they did? The ones that weren't fit didn't survive. So how's that circular exactly? I don't quite get it. And then you date the fossils by the rocks, and you date the rocks by the fossils. Okay. Like, I've seen so many videos and so many scientists talking about that and debunking that it's not even worth my time to get into it.
Number 14. When we try to show them a particular verse from the Bible to show an absolute truth or authority or statement, they always go off on their oxymoron rubbish again that it's Bronze Age mythology, when there's no evidence whatsoever for a Bronze Age except a buried layer of strata with a lot of bronze in it, and when they're senselessly, egotistically underestimating a long history of meticulous, intelligent, godly, wise people who sweated their lives out to write many books for one book that would help warn and inform future generations of people about the big picture and what's going on.
Okay, your part 14 here is starting to get a little bit on the out there. Okay. There's no evidence whatsoever for a Bronze Age. Just a buried layer of strata with a lot of bronze in it. Okay, well, a buried layer of strata with a lot of bronze in it, isn't that evidence? Okay. And he said there's no evidence whatsoever for... Okay, so... I don't understand how that works. Okay, so... people learned how to use rocks because they didn't have any technology to do anything more, and then using the technology of the rocks, they were able to start working with copper and bronze, and then using the bronze, they were able to start working with iron, and each bit of technology is built on the part before it. So, what do you mean there's no evidence for a Bronze Age? Okay. And so you're also telling me that a book written that long ago by smart, meticulous, intelligent, godly, wise Jewish people who sweated their lives out to write it? Okay, well, how is that any different from any other religious book? Okay, like, every other religious writing can state the exact same thing. So, what makes yours special?
Number 15. Atheists stress that Jesus didn't exist when he is the very person that divided our timeline dates into BC and AD, and there's no other way around to explain how that happened.
Okay, your part 15 here really caught me. Okay. You're saying that Jesus personally is the person that divided our timeline dates into BC and AD. Like, so you actually believe that Jesus is the one who did that? Okay, if that's the case, you really have to look up Anno Domini, which is what AD stands for. Okay, because just look up Wikipedia and read about it, and you will see that, the Anno Domini dating system was not used until 525 AD, and then it was not widely used until 800 AD. Okay, so they didn't start using the Gregorian calendar like that, or the dating system like that, until 500 years after Jesus was born. And even now, I remember I've seen a lot of different videos and stuff talking about the Christmas star and the birth of Jesus, and almost every single one of them put the birth of Jesus at about 6 or 7 BC, saying that the people who created the dating system got it wrong. So, if it really was done by Jesus, there's no way he would have gotten the date of his birth wrong by about 6 years. Okay, so... yeah. I'm sorry, but when 30 seconds of looking up Wikipedia is enough to debunk your points that are one of the top 16 points mistakes atheists make, then I'm sorry, but that doesn't look very good on you.
Number 16. They're erroneous, flawed, untrustworthy judging. This is the last part. Finally, number 16. They're erroneous, flawed, untrustworthy judging. They say reality's awesome, when supposed reality is totally and continuously contradicting their cheap wishful thinking. They say Expelled, which was a documentary meticulously put together by those who willingly wanted to get everything right, is boring and lying, when in reality Inherit the Wind is a boring and lying Hollywood fantasy film that got nearly nothing right about the Scopes trial. They like to say the interview between Ben Stein and Richard Dawkins is stupid and not a debate, when in reality the Anderson Cooper one was stupid and not a debate. Atheists like to say that Hovind was stumped by a scientific question, when in reality Dawkins was the one who was truly stumped by a scientific question. They like to say George Carlin, for example, was a wise, smart, intelligent person, when in reality Carlin was only a simple-minded, brainwashed, assertion-filled, drugged-up lout, no offense, and basically Kent Hovind is the one who really reaches the standard adjectives of smart, wise, and intelligent. Atheists say they're for free speech, when in reality we're the ones who are trying to fight for free speech. One word, expelled. And free speech was a right to say right things. It is simply inconsistent for denialist atheists to use that phrase in their stance, but it does go for us. Our free speech is being attacked and harassed. They like to think God doesn't exist, when in reality so much evidence has been gathered in favor of an all-powerful, all-loving creator who's always been there, and they are without excuse.
Okay, your part 16 here is another one of those weird ones, too. The erroneous, flawed, untrustworthy judging? Okay, so if I say I watched the documentary Expelled beginning to end, and I also have seen Inherit the Wind beginning to end, and what I can tell you is that I didn't see much in Expelled that I found very compelling. Like, it seemed like kind of a bit of a mishmashy stuff. Like, and Inherit the Wind, yes, it's not 100% like the Scopes trial, but it doesn't claim to be 100% like the Scopes trial. Like, however, I don't find it boring. Like, maybe you could say it's lying, sure, like, I know, like, he didn't have, like, a girlfriend like that, and the whole town wasn't out to get him and all that stuff and everything, but what does that really matter? Like, how many atheists are atheists because they saw Inherit the Wind? Like, and then you start going on about the interview between Ben Stein and Richard Dawkins is stupid and not a debate, and when in reality the Anderson Cooper one was stupid and not a debate. Okay, I'm not even sure what debate you're kind of talking about. Like, I think I saw some Richard Dawkins stuff in the Expelled documentary, but I don't know, it just seemed like a lot of Ben Stein not getting it. That's what it all seemed to me. And then atheists like to say that Hovind was stumped by a scientific question and blah blah blah. Okay, so what is it? What is that? What does any of this even matter? Okay, whether Kent Hovind is stumped by a scientific question or not, what does that have to do with whether God exists? And whether Dawkins was stumped by a scientific question or not, what does that have to do with God existing? Okay, and then you go on to say that George Carlin has been called a wise, smart, intelligent person when, in reality, Carlin was only a simple-minded, brainwashed, assertion-filled, drugged-up lout. Okay, what happened to your point you had several back there talking about all of the name-calling that goes on? Okay, like, you even put no offense after that. Okay, so you know you are basically offending. If George Carlin was still alive, you would be offending him by calling him a simple-minded, brainwashed, assertion-filled, drugged-up lout. You even put when in reality. Okay, so talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Like, you complain about atheists doing all kinds of name-calling, and then you turn around and you start name-calling yourself. And then you go on to say that Kent Hovind is the one who really reaches the standard objectives of smart, wise, and intelligent. Okay, I watched a lot of Kent Hovind videos that he's put out there of his teachings and everything, and I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure that there are people who are smarter, wiser, and more intelligent than him. You know, sorry to say. Okay, and you go on to Expelled more and say how that's stifling free speech. Okay, well, I saw the movie Expelled. The movie Expelled got made. How exactly is that stifling it? How is that stopping it? Like, I didn't see atheists come out and bomb the filming studio that did it, or no one assassinated anybody who was making the film. So, just because we didn't decide to, I don't know, prop it up and say, oh yeah, this is a great movie, that's all it takes to fight against someone's free speech? Okay, so what if I wanted to go out and make a movie called Expelled, talking about all of the atheists who get expelled from church for just not believing in God? You know, would any churches have any problem playing that movie? Okay, and your point here about they like to think God doesn't exist when in reality so much evidence has been gathered in favor? Really? Okay. So you're just stating that so much evidence has been gathered in favor. Really? What evidence? Like, just like, I could state that, oh, so much evidence has been gathered that a large blue hermaphroditic whale created the universe. And that there's no excuse for you not to believe that. Like, I could show you pages and pages and pages of evidence proving that a large blue hermaphroditic whale is what caused the universe to come into being. See, but stating it doesn't make it real, doesn't make it true. The evidence doesn't magically come into existence just because I say, oh, there's so much evidence. Like, I'll put it in capitals, so much. But really, where is it? Like I watch videos about Christian stuff a lot. Like, I was just watching a 12-part series made on the History Channel called Who Wrote the Bible? And you think that if there was some evidence for God, that somebody would make something about it. That, you know, you'd be able to pull out your camera, point a picture at it, and say, look, there's the evidence right there. But yeah, so... Wow, just so much left to, just, you know. I would love to see some evidence, but in this whole video, even, you say there's all this evidence for God existing, but I see none of it, none at all. Like, you know, what evidence? Like, what evidence do you personally see that is so much? Like, you know. Okay. Come on. Okay. Well, I think that'll do it for this video. But for one final thought, I would like to say this. Everything in this video that I said could be 100% wrong. But just because I'm wrong doesn't make you right. Like, it's not either or. It's not that either evolution is true or God is true. Like, there's a billion other things that could be true. And just because you choose to ignore them all doesn't make them go away. Thank you for watching.